everyone. Good evening. Welcome and thank you all for coming tonight to the South Carroll Board of Education Candidate Forum. And for those of you watching on TV and online, thank you for also tuning in. We also want to thank all 6 of our candidates for agreeing to participate in tonight's forum. Thank you all for coming. And thank you for Mr. Gantz and to CCPS and Liberty High School for letting us use their auditorium, and to the Community Media Center of Carroll County for hosting and broadcasting this and moderating. My name is Michelle Rogers, and I am the Liberty High School PTSO President. Jesse Lacko of the Oklahoma Road Middle School PTA is also helping to sponsor this event as well. I'd also like to thank Scott Waltower, Heather Mattern, who will be doing our timing, Katie Reed and Dan Rogers for helping to make this event happen tonight. Our goal is for the candidates running for the Board of Ed to tell us why they are running and to provide voters a chance to hear their responses to key questions and to help everyone make the most informed decision possible for the future of our schools during the general election. Remember, you're voting for each candidate. You don't have to vote per ticket. Those in the audience who are watching at home will be able to hear anything you say, and it's also being recorded. So please keep comments to a whisper or not at all. Just a thought, because it will be in Facebook history forever. Now I'm going to turn it over to Carroll Media Center's Managing Editor, Bob Blueball, who will be our moderator for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. We are really pleased to have all 6 candidates tonight, so thanks again for everybody for turning out. We appreciate everybody for coming out in the audience. All 6 candidates who are running for the Nonpartisan Board of Education, here to discuss the issues and their qualifications. So we have Tyra Battaglia, Patricia Ann Dorsey, Amanda Joskowski, James Miller, Tom Scanlon, and Steve Whistler. They all advanced through the primary election, and 3 of them will be elected in November. Just a reminder, again, each candidate is running as an individual. Voters can vote for any combination of up to 3 of them. Now let's get to the rules for tonight's forum. Going in alphabetical order, each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. Each candidate, that will be followed by a question and answer session in which each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. They will answer identical questions, so in this case there will be no debate or rebuttal. At the conclusion of the Q&A period, each candidate will have 2 minutes again for a closing statement. All responses will be timed, and the candidates will be able to see the clock ticking down. The timekeeper will ring a bell when time has elapsed, and at that point the moderator may discontinue the statement, but I will give them a chance to finish their thought. Before we start, one last reminder again, the forum is being shown live on cable and on the internet, and it is being recorded, and it's going to be shown repeatedly on TV, and it'll be on demand on internet between now and the election. So again, we ask that everyone please turn off their cell phones and hold any applause or other showing of support for the candidates until the forum has concluded. Okay, so let's begin. Each candidate may now present a 2-minute opening statement. Mrs. Battaglia, we'll start with you.
Thank you. First, I want to thank the South Carroll parent organizations and boosters, the Carroll Media Center, and our moderator for this evening. My name is Tyra Battaglia, and I am seeking re-election for the Carroll County Board of Education. I am incredibly humbled by all the support I have received thus far. As a lifelong resident of Carroll County and a graduate from Westminster High School, I am proud to say that Carroll County is my home. It is where my husband and I are raising our 3 children. I am proud of our school system and how CCPS works with what they have. As a co-leader of a local 4-H club, I am proud of Carroll County's ag programs that are in our school curriculum. I am a fine arts enthusiast, and I am proud of our art programs that are supported by our school system. As a sports fan, I am proud of the community support our student athletes receive on the fields and on the courts. All that support is because of families and our communities. As a board member, I was able to vote on the modernization of the Career and Technology Center and the East Middle School Replacement Project. I also served on the committees of the board for those 2 projects. Because of COVID, we have had some difficulties, and we are moving forward, addressing learning loss and making sure our students are getting back on track. We have our virtual programs that are being worked on regarding our students in our foreign languages, as well as some various other academic classes. I'm excited for this evening, and I'm glad that I'm here with everyone as well. And I look forward to answering some questions and hopefully your vote in a few days. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Dr. Dorsey.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Patricia Dorsey, and it is a privilege to participate in the South Carroll Candidates Forum this evening. Many thanks to Scott Waltauer, Michelle Rogers, Jesse Lotko, the Liberty High School PTSO, and the Oklahoma Road Middle School PTA for sponsoring tonight's forum. And we certainly thank the Carroll Media Center for streaming the event and making it available to all Carroll County citizens. Thanks to our moderator, Bob Bluebaugh, to the timekeeper, and to our audience for attending tonight's forum. I also thank my fellow candidates for their interest in our school system and the students we serve. It was on May 2nd of this year when we gathered here at Liberty High School for our first BOE forum prior to primary election day. And here we are, 5 months and about 3 weeks later, just prior to general election day. I continue to share a consistent, focused message related to my educational and work experiences, as well as areas of focus for my run for the board. I received a Bachelor of Science degree from Morgan State College, now University, a Master of Education degree from Western Maryland College, now McDaniel, and a Doctor of Education degree from University of Maryland College Park. I completed a 39-year career in Carroll County Public Schools as classroom teacher, resource teacher, and school administrator. All of my experiences have been very valuable, and I'll cherish the relationships I established with students, parents, staff, and colleagues. I look forward to participating in tonight's forum, and being a current member of the board, it's also allowed me to participate at the state level on our MABE committees as well. So thank you very much for the invitation this evening, and I look forward to participating.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski?
Yes, thank you again for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm Dr. Amanda Jaskowski. I'm a parent, a full-time educator, and a licensed healthcare practitioner. I'm running in order to better support students of all needs, abilities, and identities to learn and grow into successful community members, to support educators and support staff to do the job they love and that they were trained to do, to work to fund and fully enact the blueprint for Maryland's future. I believe this will be one of the keys to the future success of our great school system. I was raised by educators and felt called to teach. When I received tenure from Towson University, I was empowered to lead and serve my community on a larger level. I bring with me a range of knowledge and skills as demonstrated through my receipt of both arts and athletic scholarships in college, but also in my professional roles as both a healthcare practitioner, an occupational therapist, and a full-time educator with executive leadership experience. I will bring a focus on the future and high energy to a role on the board. I believe I'm the candidate with the 3 youngest children, and I moved to this area because of our great school system. I'm a South Carroll resident, so I'm especially pleased to be at tonight's forum among friends and neighbors. I was voted in the top 3 in the primary, and together with Dr. Dorsey and Mr. Scanlon, we have a broad coalition of support in our community. We are smart choices for strong schools. We have experience as parents, teachers, and advocates, and if elected, we will lead with confidence and competence for you and for the future of CCPS.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. Like those before me, I would like to thank the South Carroll County Forum, LHS PTSO, ORMS PTA, Carroll Media Center. Bob, thank you again. I have known Bob for years, going back to probably, 23 years ago when he used to interview me for after athletic events, and I don't expect any softballs tonight if it's based off of what I remember from years past, so thank you, Bob. I would like to also mention, I'm a graduate of Liberty High School. It was 22 years ago that I was on this stage performing in plays, walked across the stage for graduation, ceremony, practice, and it's what I remember about this county and why we moved back here with my family. I'm proud to be from Carroll County. I'm proud to be raised here. And it's the biggest reason why I moved my family back here. I'm hoping that tonight we can get to some of the true issues that are facing our schools. I'm hoping we can talk about learning loss, about bullying, about the blueprint and the funding that's going to be required here in Carroll County to pay our excellent teachers. But for the most part, I want everyone to know that I'm a parent of 3 beautiful girls that we decided to raise in Carroll County due to this wonderful school system and the wonderful teachers that we have here in Carroll County. I think sometimes people forget as they talk about the future, those who are here today. So as we sit here today, I hope everyone can remember that the reason why we're all here is because of how great our schools are and how great our teachers are. So we have to remember that as we look forward and not try to continue to replace and move forward without remembering how we got here. Lastly, I want to thank my family for giving me this opportunity. It hasn't been easy. It's been a long road and a lot of time away from the family. And I want to thank my parents for the opportunity to actually just be here in Carroll County. If it wasn't for the decision to move here some 30 years ago, you might not see me sitting up on the stage. So I love our county, proud of it. I hope we can talk about the issues tonight and how we move forward and keep our schools great.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Excuse me. Thank you for having us tonight. My guess is that by now most people know who we are, but very briefly, my name is Tom Scanlon. I was a career educator here in Carroll County for 33 years. I was a reading specialist and an English teacher, first at North Carroll High School and then at Westminster High. I'm ESOL certified, I advised our literary magazine, and I co-advised the drama club at North Carroll. Now, I bring that up because I know how important extracurriculars are for students. Whether it's theater or band or athletics or robotics, students perform better academically when they are involved in school activities. And the other key piece is having our parents engaged and involved. They help build that solid foundation we need for our schools to be successful. We need everybody involved, building school spirit and building a culture of kindness while keeping the focus on academic excellence. My top priorities for our board have remained constant. We need to provide our students the best education possible. Academics always come first, but we can't ignore the behavioral and mental health challenges we see in unprecedented levels. We can't do that without a highly qualified staff. We need competitive salaries and a supportive work environment with robust funding to make it happen. The classroom is where it all comes together. And finally, our schools are community centers where families can celebrate their kids, their schools, and their neighborhoods. Now, I'm a parent of 4 young men who went through Carroll County schools, and I've lived here for over 30 years. So I know Carroll County, and I know our schools. I know the importance of community, of dialogue, and of giving back to our schools. We want our students to be college and career ready, of course. We absolutely want them to be critical thinkers. Physical and mental health are crucial, but that's still not the whole picture. Honesty, integrity, compassion, empathy, responsibility, perseverance, these all help us be successful in life. So let's work to give each student these opportunities.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Whistler.
Thank you again. It's such a pleasure being here at Liberty High School. I, too, come from South Carroll. We have 4 children, 23-year-old, 21-year-old. Our 18-year-old just graduated here from Liberty in the summer, and we have a 7th grader at Oklahoma Road Middle. So I really appreciate my home PTSOs, PTAs for sponsoring this event tonight. I'm also a retired naval officer. I was in the Navy for 20 years, and I had so many opportunities to do so many great things for this country, and I was thankful to earn the Air Medal and Combat Action Ribbon after flying 700 flight hours, of which 250 were under combat conditions. Led hundreds of military personnel, made tough decisions in tough times. And so I think I bring that to the table as hopefully your next Board of Education member. I've also been a business executive. I've led 5 nonprofit organizations in the Baltimore, D.C. metro area, including Maryland's largest credit union, which had over $2 billion in assets and employed thousands of people. I've also been a small business owner, leading over 100 people, managing contracts with the National Security Agency, including procurement contracts, negotiated employer group contracts, and I've always managed to stay in budget. So I bring that experience to the table as well. I'm also a certified teacher. I taught 4 years in our Maryland public schools full-time and another 5 years as a substitute teacher. I definitely know the struggles facing our teachers in our classrooms. I know very well the classroom management issues, the behavior issues, the issues facing our special educators, issues facing our instructional assistants, and I, as a future board member, hopefully will help strengthen the classroom so that our teachers can focus on instruction. So I would really appreciate your vote, and I look forward to tonight's debate.
Thank you very much. Thanks to all of you. So let's get to the Q&A portion of the evening now. Obviously, there's incredible interest in this race, and among the questions I'll be asking tonight were those received, sent to us ahead of time by voters and citizens of Carroll County. We received more than 50 questions, which is quite a lot for something like this. And believe me, they were from all across the spectrum, all manner of questions. And we did our best to combine, to condense, to edit, and get to as much as we possibly can tonight. We're going to try to be here for about 2 hours, try to let you out after about 2 hours. So we can't ask too many, but we're going to do the best we can. Before we start, I will address one question that we received from 3 different citizens. I spoke to CCPS today, and just to affirm to those people who might have had questions, there's no policy and no accommodations have been made regarding students identifying as animals or furries, and there are no litter boxes for students in any school in the county, so there will not be any questions on that topic tonight. We do have a lot to get to, though, so let's get started with student achievement. And we'll start with the first question. Will be started by Dr. Dorsey. Coincidentally, timing, earlier today, the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores in math and reading were released to the public. Almost every state in the nation, Maryland included, saw a fairly significant decline in performance, particularly in math. So, what specific steps can be taken to get students back to their pre-COVID levels, and in what time frame? Dr. Dorsey?
We have to start now, certainly, to get back to the academic achievement of our students. As you mentioned, the NAEP results that were released just recently, I'm very familiar with that national assessment because as soon as I retired, I worked with WestStat, which was the company responsible for assessing students throughout the country. So I would go in as a tester, part of a team, to assess the students in grades 4 and 8 in reading and math. Again, the results are pretty dismal because, again, our students have certainly regressed as far as their skills are concerned. What we need to do is go back to a focus on teaching and learning. At this particular time, I feel that we're setting the standards high at the board level because we're certainly setting some benchmarks that we want our students to achieve at various levels. And we're going to be holding the students accountable for their learning. And a part of holding them accountable for their learning is making sure that they're also accountable for their behavior. We're going back to what we call first-time learning. So again, we've given a lot of opportunities for children to make up what they may have missed, but we want them to be tuned in right from the very beginning, and we want them to pay attention and learn the first time during the instructions and to achieve the benchmarks that we've established.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski?
Yes, the NAEP results were published yesterday, and they were disheartening, as you said. Math proficiency declined up to 8 points, but pre-pandemic was still worrisome, with only about a third achieving proficiency. So drops in test scores were even more pronounced for those who were the most vulnerable. And I wanted to echo what Secretary of Education Cardona said. These results are unacceptable, and how we respond to this will determine our recovery and our standing among other nations. Only 20% of the recovery funds given to our state were required to be spent on academic instruction. The wide latitude given for spending recovery funds seems to have been less than helpful. A concerted plan is needed, and that is something that I, along with my colleagues in education, can provide. The results about the NAEP scores were mixed, and they actually didn't correlate to reopening times with states, but rather to factors that are more reliably predictive of academic performance, like poverty and education policy. The way to combat learning loss and return classrooms to a sense of normalcy for students and staff alike and achieve academic excellence is to have people who have delivered that for decades. So we need to focus on evidence-based instructional practices, trying new ways of doing things, because it's clear that some of the old ways aren't working and weren't working prior to the pandemic. An example is the recent piloting of a co-teaching model with special educators and general education teachers in our county. These types of changes involve a culture shift and intensive training, but they can reap great benefits if done correctly and assessed for effectiveness, not just efficacy.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you for this question. I'm not going to beat around the bush. The last 2 years, what we did to our children is why we're in the predicament we're in today. The MSEA, the CCEA advocated and pushed to keep our schools closed. As a matter of fact, there's people up here who published op-eds in the Carroll County Times favoring that decision. There's people up here who supported that decision and voted for that decision. Those who know me know I showed up to board meetings, I showed up to commissioner meetings, and said the most vulnerable population is who's being affected by this decision. And for 2 years, we put them aside. So I'm not going to pretend that, that wasn't what caused this and nobody should. Now, with that being said, you're going to hear probably later on tonight a lot of people talk about we need to get instructional assistants, we need to get aides, we need to help our teachers. What we have to do is get creative, and this is where my background in finance comes in. We don't have the money in Carroll County if you're going to pay our teachers to also bring in additional help to try to get learning loss. So let's find different ways. I've talked about using some of our excellent students who excel and use them as tutors. They can tutor younger kids. We can help bring them up. Let's get back to being a community and using the community to help our students. We have gotten away from using parent volunteers in schools. Let's figure out a way that we open up our volunteer system again and get parents back into the school building to help our students. But I'm not going to pretend like some others up here that what happened the last 2 years and the teachers union, the MSEA and the CCEA advocated to close our schools and keep them closed. And as I said 2 years ago, the most vulnerable population was impacted and the test scores show that.
Thank you. Next up, Mr. Scanlon.
My number one priority as a member of the Board of Education will be to ensure our students are receiving on-grade level instruction. We need to assess where the specific learning gaps are and laser focus on those areas. We already know that reading and math are two areas that was just mentioned where we are falling behind. But we also know that one size does not fit all when it comes to education. Some decisions will need to be made at the school level. Overall, though, we know that the ELO program was successful, and we need to continue that. Small group instruction for struggling learners is extremely effective. Extending the reading and math blocks within the school day has been very effective. However, there are only so many hours in the school day. When you extend the instructional time for math and reading, you have to cut something else. So the school system needs to take a hard look and be very judicious at what gets cut. I would like to see more math specialists in our schools. That means more staffing that needs to be funded. Partnering with community organizations for after-school tutoring is another option, though that would be voluntary and would require transportation. Formal assessments like MCAP and benchmarks are a double-edged sword. We need assessments. They are valuable tools, but they take instructional time away from our students. You hear that from teachers across the board. Just give me time to teach and don't load on another new initiative. If there were easy answers, we would have done it yesterday. But addressing learning loss should be our number one priority.
Thank you. And Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, I've said since day one, the most pressing issue facing our county is learning loss, and those results issued prove it. Our students have been in a steady decline since 2013. Make no mistake about it. We're substituting the very valuable 270 minutes of instruction time we have every day with so many other things other than the basic reading, writing, arithmetic, and so forth. It is clear there were decisions made by politicians and teacher union leaders that brought this upon us today, and there's no question about it. And you can make every excuse in the book if you want. But as a teacher, I taught children that were 3, 4, 5 years behind on grade level. And we need to focus on them, not all of the other stuff that we're trying to see injected in our schools, not just around the nation, not just in our state, but at times even in our county schools. We do need to surround our teachers with instructional assistants and special educators to help pull kids off to the side and give them remedial instruction when needed. But that's going to take funding, and I don't anticipate that funding coming from the state because we are forecasted to be 24th out of 24th in jurisdictions to be funded under Blueprint. So we have to get creative. We have to leverage the business community. We got to call upon parents, retired teachers, but our kids need you, and we need everybody to come together now.
Thank you. And Mrs. Battaglia.
I'm very proud of the fact that Carroll County Public Schools was one of the first school systems to get our students back into the classroom and also just have discussions regarding the learning loss programs that were created and implemented that summer. We funded transportation, making sure students had meals, and those students were identified by their teachers, by their administrators, and also parents' advocation as well if they felt that their child needed more attention to get back up to par. We do need to continue with our learning loss to help our students, and they're getting there. I'm very blessed. I just had a wonderful parent-teacher conference with my youngest daughter's teacher. Last year, her scores weren't that great, but they've improved dramatically. And that's something that we need to continue regarding parent involvement with our children. That is one of the most important pieces. When you include a parent in with discussions regarding what a child needs, it does benefit the child. I agree we need to look into our community programs, such as our honor societies from our high schools. It's something incredible that they can do to go into the middle schools or potentially elementary schools and offer some type of tutoring as well.
Thank you. Okay, we talked about students a little bit. Let's talk about teachers. It's been a rough couple years. How do you propose to support teachers and increase teacher retention, as well as attracting talented new teachers to Carroll County? And we'll start with Dr. Jaskowski.
Thank you. Well, I've made supporting educators one of the hallmarks of my campaign, and I think that, a lot of it is about not just funding, as many of us have talked about already, but making sure that we are showing genuine care and concern for our educators. So making sure that we are acknowledging the hard work that they do every day, trusting them, and realizing that they are the experts in their classrooms. This includes also instructional assistants, folks that work in the library, and every other job within the schools. We need to expand initiatives like the Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship and the Grow Your Own Teacher Preparation Program, some of which are housed at Towson University. These are programs that help young people who are interested in education pursue becoming a teacher and also help to inspire future generations. These are the people that we want teaching our kids because they're the ones that are interested and excited about the profession. And just honoring all of those who support our schools. Like I said, the custodial workers, the cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, and that means that they should be able to work in a space that is comfortable, that's safe, that's in good condition, that has an administrator that supports them, and that they have also the salary that allows them to live comfortably.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I think the first thing we have to do is focus on the teachers that we have today. As I mentioned in my opening comments, the reason why Carroll County Public Schools are as great as they are, and everybody up here who's not from here or moved here, was because of the school system. So the first thing we have to do is focus on the teachers we have today. I've mentioned before in many other settings that currently 88% of our county budget is already going towards salaries, benefits, and overhead. It only leaves 12% to be looked at as potentially being used towards funding. Anybody in finance or has a background in finance, that's not very much when you're talking about a budget, half the county budget from the commissioners essentially, or what should be. My first step, which I've talked about before, is to advocate from our commissioners to try to get additional funding in the current tax dollars to make sure that we can give our teachers that missed their steps to get them back to where they need to be. Let's focus on the teachers that are here today. In terms of retention, I think we need to listen. One thing that I pride myself on is I believe I have an open mind, and a lot of teachers will send emails or phone calls or text messages with things that happen throughout the day, and a common theme is it doesn't seem like anybody cares, it doesn't seem like anybody wants to listen. So I think the first step to respect is being able to have an open mind and listen, allow them to teach, allow them to do what they love. But I think the biggest thing is, in terms of retention and being competitive, is we got to work with our commissioners and work closely with them to ensure that everybody's tax dollars are being spent wisely. There's two things that I believe anybody in this county would agree on. We need to fund public safety and education. So let's talk with our commissioners about that and getting us where we need to be.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, for now, teacher shortages and retention are not at a crisis level in Carroll County, but we do have more teachers with provisional certification than I would like. We have one of the least diverse staffs in the state. We know that special education is an area with great needs. That often go unmet are gifted and talented programs, so we definitely have needs. Obviously, one of the issues is salaries. Teachers often don't come to Carroll because of the salary. They come here because we have great schools, we have great neighborhoods, great kids. But if you look at the salaries, our starting salary is below that of surrounding counties, and it's been like that for as long as I've been around. But when you look at 5 years out, other than Frederick County, we are significantly behind other counties. So we definitely have to look at that. We also have to support or pay our support personnel a living wage. Instructional assistants, bus drivers, and all that were mentioned. These people all need a living wage. And our educators also need to feel respect. They feel as if they are being listened to. We can't say we have great teachers, but then accuse them of indoctrinating our kids in the same breath. Our educators are on the front lines every day. We need to be listening to them so we can better improve our school system. Staff turnover negatively impacts our students. So as a Board of Ed member, I want to sit down with teachers and building administrators to hear what they need.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, our teachers are our most amazing asset in our county. When other counties were affected by the pandemic, our Board of Education and our teachers sprang into action, and we got kids into schools, albeit virtual, but we got our kids back in front of their teachers so much faster than other counties. And when the state results come out, I'm sure that we're going to be far less off than, say, other counties, and that's because of our teachers. I am committed to ensuring that every blueprint dollar that we get, as much as possible, go towards increasing our teacher salaries. It is critical that they're paid fairly and they're compensated what they deserve. I also want to make sure that we cultivate and grow teacher-parent partnerships. As a former teacher, the research is clear, and I've seen it myself firsthand. Kids and students excel when teachers and parents work together for students. We need to make sure that we're breaking down barriers, building bridges so that parents are welcome into our schools, and that we can team with parents to get the kids where they need to be. Our teachers need to deal with less paperwork. I want to see them go through some more comprehensive training to learn the latest techniques of teaching students. And I want to make sure that we empower our principals and our administrators to deal with problem children when they occur, so that our teachers can focus on teaching and not behavioral issues.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia?
So lately, parents have become very involved in what their children are learning, and we do need to keep up with that momentum of parent involvement in our child's education, but we also need to make sure we are helping out in our schools, helping with our teachers and the staff, and being part of the school community. We've continued to sit down with our county commissioners on a quarterly basis, and I do want that to continue to discuss with them what the needs of the school system are. Unfortunately, the school system is handed a dollar amount, and that is it. We can advocate all day long for 50% of the county budget. I continue to advocate for that. We also need to sit down more with our delegates. That was a yearly meeting, and we are going to be continuing to do that as well, to hopefully that they can even advocate in Annapolis on our behalf for more funding, so we can make sure that we are getting our teachers paid, and we are doing everything possible to make sure that they have the resources for their classrooms to make sure our students are learning what they need. I am proud of the fact that the past 3.5, almost 4 years, I have voted to make sure our teachers and staff, our custodians, our bus drivers all receive funding, raises, and bonuses.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
We certainly have to support our teachers, and I'm glad the question dealt with recruitment and retention because they do go together. Not only are we trying to bring new teachers into our system, but we certainly need to retain the excellent staff members that we do have. Part of showing support to the teachers is making sure that we trust them and to show them that we are trusting them to deliver the instruction for their curriculum areas. We have to show them respect, so they should never ever doubt that their Board of Education members stand behind them. We should show that support to them on an ongoing basis. We have to build in some structures to treat them as professionals. We need to give them time to collaborate, to problem solve, and work together in teams to support the achievement of their students. So we need to build in some structures to enhance these type opportunities for them to really work together. We need to continue to work to make sure that the salaries are competitive. One of the things that we'll be looking at is school climate surveys. We really need to get the input of the teachers to find out exactly what their thoughts are concerning their working conditions, and we need to use those results to make some improvements as needed. As far as recruitment, we need to use our teachers to help us recruit other teachers, and we need to continue to grow our own as well. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question, let's turn to the blueprint for Maryland's future. It's already been mentioned tonight a couple times. Some call it landmark legislation that will help student outcomes soar. Others deride it as an unfunded mandate that's impractical for Carroll. What's your take on the blueprint? And if commissioners are unable or will not increase funding, if the state continues with its position that Carroll doesn't qualify for more funding, how do you propose to meet the blueprint requirements? And are school closures a possibility? And let's start with Mr. Miller.
Thank you for that. So first, let's talk about funding. As Steve already mentioned, we're 24th out of 24 counties in proposed funding under blueprint. The state is essentially mandating that Carroll County raise teacher minimum pay for starting teachers, which is going to cause compression within our salary bands, which means we would have no choice but to also increase teacher pay across the board. And they're mandating that without funding. So to answer the first part of that question, if the state were to come in and mandate that we do something without paying for it, and our commissioners are unable to, under the current tax structure, to pay for that, I would have no choice but to say that we wouldn't be able to implement blueprint. I really don't know how you go forward without the funding. So I don't know. Again, I would hope we'd work with our commissioners, but if the tax dollars aren't there and the state funding isn't there, there really isn't a way forward. And I think anybody who would try to say differently may not be being truthful in that. As for the second part of your question in terms of communities and schools, I'm also not somebody that's going to tell you today, sitting up here, that we're not going to redistrict or we're not going to close schools. I know there's currently a study being done by the current Board of Education. But as we move forward, whether it's this year, next year, or 10 years down the road, we got to constantly be looking at our schools. We got to constantly be looking at the amount of population that we have, the expected growth, and make smart, educated decisions around how we move forward. I think it would be improper, and I think it wouldn't be something I could stick to if I were to tell you one way or the other today. Until that study is done, I don't think anybody really can answer that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, well, certainly the blueprint is a work in progress, especially the implementation. I don't think any of us really know what's going to happen in the next few years. On paper, sounded like a great idea. That 45% of high schoolers would graduate with some industry-recognized certification. The pre-K, voluntary pre-K. But as has been mentioned here, the funding of that is definitely an issue. Because in theory, the blueprint is supposed to fund about 50% of the salary increases, but it's more of a sliding scale based on the county's wealth. And we know that even though it's hard for me to believe that Carroll County is a wealthy county, I don't feel wealthy. It is considered one. So we do know that the blueprint is highly focused on high poverty areas in the state. But the idea of teachers being treated as professionals and having a career ladder, I think it is excellent. But and as far as the second part of the question, I've been through the school closures. I would definitely fight that with everything I have. I think it was very damaging to our county. And as far as redistricting, at some point, comprehensive redistricting is probably going to be a reality, but not in the immediate future.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, one of the most important thing I think voters need to realize is the people that you elect in the next couple of weeks, they really need to understand the finance and the business side of Blueprint. There are some tremendous mandates coming down that won't be funded. Clearly, this is going to impact pre-K. We only have one pre-K classroom in every elementary school except one. Freedom, we have none. We're supposed to have two. Where are we going to put them? Will the state come down and say that we can't continue to use our private religious institutions for pre-K services? Will they say that they have to be certified teachers doing pre-K? All of these things we don't know. And once again, the majority party in Annapolis puts forth something on paper that looks good, that the voters approve overwhelmingly. And Carroll County, once again, like under Kerwin, is going to be cheated. And we have to make sure that we do with what we've got, because Carroll County has a history of doing unbelievable things with what it's given. And our teachers are a big reason for that. But with Blueprint, it is going to be a very big challenge for us. And I think we're going to have to come together and work together to make sure that we squeeze every tax dollar we have into making everything we have work for our students.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
So unfortunately, with Blueprint, Carroll County Public Schools is being punished because we are doing well. Our teachers do phenomenal work with what they have. It's not fair, but they do very well with what they have. The career ladder is an incredible idea. Dual enrollment is an incredible idea. However, CCPS will be required to pay for students that are going to do dual enrollment with the Carroll Community College. Where's that money going to come from? It is unfortunate that CCPS is being punished because we do so well. They say we have a low poverty level, and there was an article I read the other day. Unfortunately, the census wasn't completed, but we do have about a 5% poverty level in Carroll County. Also, our Hispanic community is growing, and we are going to need funding for more ESOLs. School closure question, I think everyone knows at this point how I feel, and it's an absolute no. At no time do you close schools on the backs of students to give raises. I don't think that's appropriate. It is harmful for communities, and actually would decrease some property tax values, which is less money the county does get, and that did happen when they closed the first set of closures 3 years ago.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
The Blueprint certainly presents some challenges for us as well as some opportunities. We're certainly going to have to work together to meet the requirements. We're at the beginning stages of planning right now, and one of the things that our system is doing for each of the 5 areas that are covered by the Blueprint, we have focus groups who are really working in each of those areas, trying to meet the mandate of the requirements. As has been discussed, the money piece certainly is the challenge for us. We have to have our beginning teachers at a certain salary level. Our nationally board certified teachers have to receive a certain salary. So again, it really is important for us to make sure that our state legislators, our county commissioners know what our needs are so that we can try to address those. So again, that's the big challenge at this point. One of the exciting parts of it, though, is that, the Blueprint is looking at raising the professional status of teachers, and I think that's pretty exciting, trying to elevate the profession to make it comparable to other professions that have the same requirements as far as the educational levels are concerned. The career ladders, again, will present an opportunity for teachers to grow professionally. How we work it out, again, we're going to problem solve and work together, but I'm certainly willing to do that. and not in favor at all of closing any schools.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
So saying we will get less doesn't mean we're being punished. And it doesn't mean we're going to get none, and it doesn't mean we will even get not enough. We don't know yet the allocations, but we do have the ability to develop great relationships with state leaders to be able to get done, as others have said, what we need to do. I'm fully confident that those of us with experience doing this in education will be able to lead us to do so. Mr. Miller has stated that he first wants to find some money somewhere to pay for additional SROs, and only after that he'd consider trying to increase salaries for teachers, which doesn't seem to make a lot of sense based on what I just heard. I have experience making difficult budget decisions with taxpayer funds in alignment with a strategic plan. I do that as part of my role at Towson University. Implementing the blueprint for Maryland's future is a huge opportunity that must be planned for and done correctly. We must support all students so they can learn effectively, develop a sense of belonging in their school communities, and be prepared for college and career. Redistricting or recommending capital improvements for South County schools is both challenging and critically important. And I'm very pleased that we have these implementation studies so that we can see what is truly feasible. We need to do all we can to provide CCPS educators and other personnel with appropriate compensation and relief from overwork and overwhelm in alignment with the blueprint. And we need to make clear that we value and care for school system employees by treating them with dignity and respect in alignment with the blueprint.
Thank you. Moving on, we'll start this question with Mr. Scanlon. According to Education Week, there have been 34 school shootings resulting in at least one death in 2022. That's another new record. We set a new record on this one every year. Are you satisfied with the safety level of our schools in Carroll County? And are there other measures that you might propose? For example, making changes to the SRO program or even allowing permitted educators to carry guns? Start with Mr. Scanlon.
Well, school security is, of course, very important. Our CCPS team of Curtis Pierce and Brian Elliott do a tremendous job. For example, last summer they went around and checked every exterior door in the school system to be sure that they were locked and working properly. Now that may not sound impressive, but without secure doors we are at risk. And it doesn't take people long to learn which doors are working and which ones get propped open. So we can't let that happen. I think we all agree that the SRO program here in Carroll County is a model for the rest of the state. We need to give credit to Sheriff Jim DeWeese and Lieutenant Phil Lawrence, who oversees the program, for selecting the right candidates and providing the appropriate training for the job. These officers are integral parts of the schools where they serve, and each high school has a dedicated SRO officer, and the middle schools and the elementary schools share officers. The funding to expand the program would have to come from the county commissioners. But to step back and look at school safety research, there is zero evidence to support a further hardening of our schools. What is shown to be effective is a positive working relationship between our schools, mental health providers, and law enforcement. We need early identification and interventions with mental health concerns. Staff needs professional development in supporting positive mental health in our students. And let's return to a culture of kindness to reduce bullying. We need to do a better job of identifying substance abuse, etc.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I am so proud to be endorsed by Sheriff DeWeese. I have talked with him quite a bit about security for our students. I am completely proud of and will always support SROs in every school. I'd love to see the county expand that. And security starts when your child is waiting for the bus. And I'm thankful that the sheriff has even asked deputies to make sure that we enforce cars not going around buses when they're stopped and having students get on and get off. You know, my military experience prompts me to think that we need to be proactive, not reactive. And there's no doubt in my mind that our SROs are role models for our students. We need them in our schools. I'm hearing things like students that want their SRO to be the speaker at graduation because their relationship is so great. But our students need those authority figures. They need to develop those relationships with people in authority. And security goes just beyond with the SROs. We need to make sure that we're looking at cybersecurity for our students. Our students access their computers at school, and we need to make sure that they don't access inappropriate sites and that folks can't access them through their computers. So, if I'm on the Board of Education, trust me, security is going to be something that I look at, and I'm really proud to be endorsed by our sheriff.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia?
We have a wonderful security director for CCPS. Even our previous one was wonderful. We have amazing partnerships with our sheriff. We have amazing partnerships with our local other law enforcement agencies, Hampstead, Westminster, Sykesville, Eldersburg. We're very cognitive of the fact that yes, there's some bad things that happen. And unfortunately, you can't stop one person that is out to do something bad. You can put as many preventative measures in place, but the sad reality is if someone's going to do something, they're going to do it. And what we also need to do is make sure to teach our children that if they see something, say something. We also, as parents, need to be mindful of what our children are doing and seeing on social media, because a lot of social media does trickle back into the school system itself. And unfortunately, that's where some of the actions of those that have taken place stem from being bullied, harassed. So we also, yes, need to make sure our students know to be kind to each other, be nice, don't be rude, don't be ignorant. Social media is unfortunately one of those issues, and it does not help with the mental health either. But we have a wonderful security director.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey?
Providing a safe, secure environment is certainly paramount to our students' safety and achievement. They can't achieve, they can't learn if they don't feel safe. So it's certainly a paramount responsibility that we have to make sure that we've provided a safe, secure environment for our learners. We just recently had a work session on school security, and there are many efforts that we're just very proud of. Many steps are in place to make sure that our schools are safe. There are certainly some things that can be shared publicly as far as school security is concerned, and other things, as you would understand, are not shared, not because we're trying to hide anything, but to go along with the security of the building. Certain things have to be, kept private, so to speak. But just please know that every school has a security team, and they have safety plans in place. They rehearse, they practice these plans so that they're prepared just in case there is a situation. We're very proud that at our school system level, we have added another person, so we have 2 people now on the team, and they can actually go out and provide more support to the schools. They go out and they certainly observe all of our schools. They make recommendations for changes, and again, I think our SROs work in conjunction with our central office staff to make sure that we have a safe environment for everyone.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski?
This is a topic that's on my mind every day as a parent sending my child off to school, as an educator that works in an environment that's now unfortunately perceived as high risk for gun violence and other behavioral concerns. I'm very concerned about gun violence, drug use, bullying and harassment in the schools. If elected, I'd work to create a culture of respect and mutual accountability at all levels in CCPS. This would include completing comprehensive school safety assessments at every school, continuing to partner with the school resource officers and the Sheriff's Department to meet the mandates of the Safe to Learn Act, increasing prevention strategies and staff training on behavioral threat assessment and management, and enhancing mental health supports. I'm a big fan of the psychologist Ross Green, who says that kids do well when they can. And if children aren't supported, then they will show negative or maladaptive behaviors, and they won't be available for learning. So schools need to educate on and monitor social media use as appropriate, provide more counseling and support staff to give focused attentions to students in need of the support, because more individualized support is what really helps students do well.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. The timing of that question was ironic, given the comment to the last question. Maybe the pre-scripted answers were flipped. But in terms of SROs, I am proud of the officers that we have in our school systems. I know Liberty High School, I think I saw a little earlier tonight, she may still be here. They're role models for our students. So I don't believe cutting funding or removing SROs is going to help our students. I would love to see our SRO program expanded. Obviously, that's a commissioner decision. It comes from their tax dollars, not the funding from the Board of Education. But I think they're a huge asset to our school system. But let's go back to the problem, which I think I talked about maybe the last forum or before. And that's really what happens before kids get to the point where they feel like they have to do something in school. So let's look at the bullies, and let's look at the state's current, I guess you can call it, keep them in the classroom policy that allows bullies to continue to bully their students and not hold them accountable. Let's look at social media. I've talked about getting phones out of the classroom. I mean, if we want to take a first step to getting students back on track in education and get a first step to getting kids back to, coming to school and being safe, let's look at the phone policy and maybe figure out a way to get social media and our phones out of our schools. To answer your last question about whether we should expand or allow teachers, I think I'm the only one that may touch on this one, that allow teachers to be armed. I believe that was the end of the question, Bob. I'm a firm believer in everyone's right to protect themselves, but if we expand the SRO program, that obviously wouldn't be necessary. So let's start there first.
Thank you. Flags became the most talked about issue in CCPS this spring. Were you pleased with the resolution which banned the pride flag and most other flags from school property? And how did you view the amount of time and discussion spent on the issue? And this time we'll start with Mr. Whistler.
So I couldn't hear, but I think it was the pride flag issue. Is that right?
Yes, I'm sorry. Do you want me to repeat it? Or?
Yeah, if you could.
Sure. Flags became a pretty talked about issue in CCPS this spring. Were you pleased with the resolution which banned the pride flag and most other flags from school property? And how did you view the amount of time and discussion spent on this issue?
Yeah, so actually I was pleased with the outcome. I think the Board of Education made the right call on the flag policy. And just to be clear, there were no flags banned. It was simply a clarification on what flags could be displayed within the schools and on the infrastructure and the walls and whatnot. It is so important that we have a great climate in our classrooms that focus on learning. And we need to, and again, as a teacher, I wanted to do everything I could to remove distractions in my room, whether it be cell phones, disruptive students. But, there's only, again, 270 minutes of instruction each day in our schools for all the subjects. And we have to have kids focused on that. So the flag policy, I think, is the right way to go. I do not want to see our schools be an epicenter for activism or for political statements. And again, we can make our students feel safe, welcome, respected by ensuring that our teachers and our staff are excellent role models for our students. We can make sure that our students meet standards to be kind, respectful, and treat other students with dignity. And we need to make sure that we uphold and enforce the existing policies we have with regards to bullying and actions that make others feel unsafe and unwelcome.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
So being as I was a board member that did vote for this policy, my main concern was someone would bring in a flag of opposition, and that flag would have to be permitted. And a lot of people don't understand that. You can create a flag, and then someone else can create another flag of opposition, and you would have to permit that one. Just as Mr. Whistler said, we need to remove distractions from our classroom. And unfortunately, there are many things that are part of that distraction. We need to make sure our children are learning how to read and write and know how to do math, and we need to remove any of the social justice, this side, that side. It has to stop. That's not what should be appropriate for our children. They shouldn't have to worry about adult discussions or decisions at such a young age. So 3 flags being the American flag, the county flag, and the state flag. And there's only 2 flags that are actually banned from CCPS, and that is the Confederate flag and the Nazi flag. You can't wear anything. You can't have it on your bumper. Nothing. All the other ones that we don't allow, like in the classroom itself, you can still wear shirts, buttons, pins, and still be proud of who you are individually.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
As you shared, certainly this whole flag policy was certainly much talked about. I'm all for patriotism, and I would think that everyone in this county is as well. We certainly respect our American flag, state flag, and county flag. But we had a group of students who really felt excluded. We have had the little pride emblems in classrooms for a number of years, and it only became an issue when a certain group took the flags to every school to be visible in every classroom, and it was only supposed to be made available to teachers if they chose to have one of those little emblems in their classroom to support this underrepresented group of students. So, you know, we talk about having welcoming and safe spaces for our students. We talk about being kind. But for me, I'm thinking if somebody is saying that this is something that I really feel like would be helpful, if this is just displayed, I'll know that if I have a problem or a situation, I can come to you, and as a teacher, you would respect me and you would certainly look out for me to make sure that I'm not being bullied or harassed. And do we need that for teachers to actually show that respect to the students? Well, maybe not, but for those students, they said that they did. So I'll have to say that, you know, I would still want to go back to having those emblems available for the teachers who chose to display them.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
My opponents have claimed that repealing this policy is my #1 priority, but in fact, I stated that one of my first actions would be to move to repeal this policy because I was asked what actions I would take on a policy level to address diversity concerns. I actually agree that flags are not the only way to demonstrate inclusivity. The passage of this policy was politically motivated and deeply upsetting to many students and community members. It was a massive waste of time, and the fact that it was put in place during Pride Month was simply gross. I think that there are other ways to address your concerns about flags, including existing policies related to teacher expectations and limiting political materials in the schools. Flags were never an issue prior to this year, so I see this policy as unnecessary and divisive, and based on the many conversations I've had with students and parents, I believe the majority of our community agrees with this. I also agree with most community members that politics do not belong in the classroom. I approve of the previous policies, which limited teachers from expressing personal political opinions. The revised policy this year took this a step too far by putting in place a sense of surveillance or distrust in our educators, making them feel unsafe to teach accurate history and other topics that might sometimes be uncomfortable, even if they are necessary. The bottom line is that this policy was a distraction from learning. There were 5 Board of Education meetings in a row in which academic instruction was not discussed.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. So I think first I would say, you know, we have a distribution policy in CCPS, and I know it well being the Vice President of North Cal Rec Council and President of North Cal Rec Lacrosse program. You know, my program can't drop flyers off at school, for example, to advertise girls lacrosse or soccer or baseball. They can't be distributed, and we're a Rec Council program. So honestly, I don't even know how we got to this point, given that there's a distribution policy in place that should have limited the distribution of the flags. With that being said, teachers felt pressure. They felt pressure, as Dr. Dorsey said, that students wanted to see the flag to make sure that that was an inclusive classroom. So a teacher felt pressure that, well, if I don't take it because I don't want my classroom to be a distraction, does that mean students believe they can't come to me? Does that mean believe I'm not inclusive? It created a distraction. I think when I look at it, I think we have to address the issue at hand, which is bullying, which is students not being kind to one another. My daughter today actually wore a rainbow headband with a P on it because we're Phillies fans to school today. And she should not have been bullied for wearing that on her head. She had every right to wear it. She didn't take it off. She was proud of it, and she stuck up for herself. So is the issue the flag on the wall? Is the issue that we're not allowing teachers to put that flag up? Or is the issue that we're not teaching kids to be kind to one another? So I think we're actually distracting from the true issue by continuously bringing up the flag policy. The true issue is we got to get back to having kids being kind to one another and letting teachers teach and everybody be inclusive regardless of a flag.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, I spoke, against the new flag policy at 2 Board of Ed meetings. Creating a warm and inviting classroom is what we want our teachers to do. As I have said previously, our LGBTQ students already feel marginalized and misunderstood. So why would you create a policy that further makes them feel unaccepted? Then there are the unintended consequences. There is the 9/11 flag, the Blue Lives Matter flag. Can we show support for Ukraine with a flag? I had the flag of Ireland in my classroom. That would have to come down. I was proud of my Irish heritage. It wasn't political. So having said all that, though, I don't believe trying to immediately reverse that flag policy is wise. I think we have been involved in political posturing, and too much time was already spent on that issue. So I think right now, it would not be the time. And secondly, there are workarounds. There are many ways for our staff to demonstrate their classrooms are safe environments. And it could be, or an office, school counselor's office, media center, wherever. These are places where students can go and know that they are in a friendly location. Right now, we need to bring our focus back on academics, back to filling the learning gaps, so we have on-grade level instruction. But we do want our classrooms to be warm and inviting.
Thank you. So redistricting has been tabled for now, but it's a very safe bet you'll be talking about it and maybe voting on it over the next 4 years. Compound question. Is comprehensive redistricting necessary? If so, can all effective students remain in their own communities? And based on growth and aging infrastructure, should Carroll be considering building new facilities? And we'll start with Mrs. Battaglia.
So I'll start with the growth and building new schools. I'm going to say no. And the reason why is because the state will come back and say, well, did you redistrict first? Did you look at the spaces that you have available, which we really don't have spaces available. But the way that the formula works is what the state will look at deciding if we need a new building or not. Redistricting is hard. I've been there. I've been through it. And that's why we're currently doing the feasibility study. So we have a really good grasp on what is coming down the pipeline, what we need to do, what the growth looks like, what is going to be required with Blueprint. Everything is about footage and number of students that can fit into a classroom. And I like smaller classroom sizes. The student learns better, the teacher can teach better. If you make your classroom sizes more than 20-some kids, particularly elementary level, it makes things so much harder for the teacher, and the students are not able to learn in a good environment. So redistricting always has to be looked with a very fine lens. I'm not in favor of just building schools to build schools, because we've already seen what happened with that many years ago. But everything has to be done extremely carefully with the community's love of their area.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey?
With the most recent Southern Area Redistricting Committee sharing its report with the board, and then sharing some public feedback and comments with us. It's noteworthy to say that as a board, we certainly listen to the concerns that were expressed from the community. We don't want people to think that we're just redistricting just to be redistricting. And, I heard the comments when people were saying that they built homes in the Sykesville area because they wanted to be in Sykesville and they don't want to be a part of a group that's going to be sent to Westminster. So all of that is understandable. I think as a board at this time, we're doing the best thing possible, which is moving forward with this redistrict or with this feasibility study, because the feasibility study is going to provide us with some answers to help us move forward. And as we move forward with the answers from this feasibility study, we can do it in a comprehensive fashion. We can take a look at the capital projects, our pre-K classrooms, and then I think once we have all of that information, it can help direct how we move forward, with a plan. And again, we certainly want to keep people in their schools as much as possible. So if there are ways that we can add on to existing buildings that are at this time inadequate, hopefully the feasibility study will help us do that.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski?
As I mentioned at the beginning, my children are currently districted for the Freedom Orms Liberty feeder pattern, which is the most overcrowded in this county. I frequently spend time in these and a number of other schools in the area, so I see the impact that this issue has on our employees, on the buildings, and the students' learning. I'm very pleased that the redistricting plan has been slowed down, but I will continue to push for better longer-term planning. This includes working with the commissioners to identify priorities and obtaining the resources to fund them. There's a long list of overdue capital improvements that the board reviews annually, and most often those limited funds go towards roof replacements and HVAC systems, which are critically necessary in the short term, but they don't address larger issues related to space. Not only at the schools identified as overcrowded, but those that will need to accommodate kindergarten and pre-K classrooms in the near future as part of the blueprint. I think the feasibility studies that were authorized will give us a clearer picture of what's possible and whether the new buildings or additions would make the most sense. The board and committee members must work closely with the commissioners and planning officials to review long-term budget and growth projections, think creatively about the use of fees and community investment, and consider models from similar systems that have proven effective. Adjusting school boundaries is always a complicated process, but it doesn't have to be painful. It's important to me to listen to citizens in the affected neighborhoods of which I am a part, and to thoughtfully incorporate their input with an understanding of the system's strategic plan and initiatives like the Maryland Blueprint to ensure that these decisions are guided by evidence and in alignment with our priorities.
Thank you. Mr. Miller?
Thank you. So with the South Carroll redistrict plan that came out, there were some emails I received. I think there was a handful of families, like 4 or 5 families in a small little pocket that were being moved, that everybody kind of touched on. As a way that maybe we could look at the plan a little bit closely to see to ensure that we're not moving, small handfuls of kids out of their community just to move 5 or 6 kids. But I want to touch on, I think I'm the only one up here who could probably say that because my age and living in Carroll County at the time, I was in 8th grade when Orms opened. And we took a Christmas break, and I came back from Christmas break and went from Sykesville and went to Orms. We got redistricted. It wasn't a choice I had, but we made it work. It was a group of students that went, and we all ended up going to Liberty High School together, and it worked. It's not something I think as a county we can write off, but at the same time, I appreciate everybody slowing down and taking a look at the study to ensure we're doing it properly. It wasn't too long ago we had 5 high schools in the county, and Westminster was the largest. It was a 4A school. For those who know what that means from a sports standpoint, it's they grade schools by how large you are. LHS, South Carroll, and North Carroll, all 3A. FSK was a 1A. So we had a large high school, the largest high school, and then 3 high schools that were considered above the state average. At this point right now, all our high schools are 1A or 2A. So they're much smaller than they were, before Century was open and Man Valley was opened. So we have to look at creative ways to ensure that we're spending our money properly. We have to look at capital improvements. I actually agree that we can look at ways to improve our schools so that maybe we can expand them if needed. But with everything we talked about funding, I think it's going to be tough to expand on capital projects, given everything else that we have to do in the county.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon?
Yeah, redistricting is definitely a difficult issue. There's no easy answer. The the schools in the southern part of the county are, at capacity or above capacity. We're seeing some of the elementary schools in Westminster area at capacity. And nobody wants it to happen to them. So, as far as my position is, I believe we need to keep our neighborhoods together as much as possible. We want a clean feeder system as much as possible. We have to look at travel time. As I said, there's no easy answers. These feasibility studies, I think, are an excellent first step. I want to agree with Ms. Battaglia, who mentioned that the state will require redistricting before they're going to fund other schools. And I was at North Carroll when we were packed to the gills. You could barely move in those halls. And I believe to this day that if redistricting had happened in the county, that school would still be open. So when I talk about redistricting, I think of comprehensive, countywide. At some point, it's just going to happen. You're going to have to rip the Band-Aid off. Nobody wants it, but and the idea of long-term planning, we've heard that from some other people too, is absolutely essential.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, we definitely will need to tackle the redistricting issue. And honestly, when you consider the requirements coming down from the state for Blueprint and the space issues for pre-K, for elementary schools, I think a comprehensive look is inevitable, as painful as it is. There just simply isn't the funds. The funds just aren't there to build new facilities now, quickly, or expand them. And I've even talked with some commissioners, and there's not a whole lot of willingness to cough up funds for that. I was a member of the Community Advisory Council for Oklahoma Road Middle when my now 18-year-old used to go to ORMS. And I went to those CAC meetings for the redistricting last time, and it was so painful. I don't want to see families go through that, but unfortunately, it's inevitable. We have to balance as board members the need to use existing space that the taxpayers already paid for. We have to ensure small class sizes for our students, especially when we see these results that were released yesterday that show such a tremendous learning loss that's been happening since 2013. We have to have substantial community input. We cannot do this with just a small committee here or a small committee there recommending what happens. We have to have substantial community input. And we have to have a long-range plan for capital funding projects. We also have to look at space. Freedom Elementary is on 9 acres. We want our elementary schools to be at least 13 acres. So we have a lot to do, but we can get it done with the community's help.
Great. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, 90 seconds for answers. Everybody's going a little bit long, understandable, but we can try to keep it to 90 seconds. I'd appreciate it. This question, this time we will start with Dr. Dorsey. Carroll is seeing more and more transgender students, and we had more questions submitted about this than any other. So for all of you, do you agree with current policy and do you agree with current policy allowing students to use the bathroom with which they feel most comfortable? And do you believe, which in some cases that is sometimes a nurse bathroom or a staff bathroom, do you agree with the current policy requiring that parents be notified if students ask to be referred to by a different name or pronoun than they had previously? And are you in agreement with the State Athletic Association's current policy on transgender athletic eligibility? Sorry for the long question, but a lot of people were looking at it as very important, so I wanted to try to get it all in. So we'll start with Dr. Dorsey. Thanks.
Okay, yes, I'll try to get to each of those points if I can. Certainly our current policy, we're really pushing for parent involvement. At this particular time, as far as our transgender students are concerned, we're not allowed to use other pronouns or other names without the parent's consent. So if a child is is saying that they'd like to go by another name or use another pronoun, we have to have a conference including the administration, the counseling staff, the student, and the parent. And again, we want to be very transparent with that. It's the parent who has to be included in these decisions. And I hear some people saying that, it's really going to cause a problem in some of the homes that aren't supporting students. But the bottom line is that, as a parent, you have the right to know and to be included in those decisions. So that's really what the current policy is stating, that we certainly have to make sure that parents are included in these type decisions. As far as bathrooms, I think if we could just have the type situation that we have currently at the new tech center, where they're pretty much just bathrooms that any student can use, they're all private, that would be the best scenario. So I'm sorry, I ran out of time for some of these other points.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
The current CCPS handbook or manual says that a student's gender shall be identified by the parent at the time of enrollment as male, female, or non-binary. Subsequently, a student's gender may be changed upon request of the parent or legal guardian or eligible student after a parent-student conference is held with a school administrator, quote, with extreme sensitivity to whether or not the family is aware of the student's status. I think it's really important that we pay attention to that last piece about an eligible student. I agree with Dr. Dorsey that including the parent in the conversation to the extent possible makes absolute sense. I think that there are also cases where this doesn't make sense for students because it's about their safety and about potentially their lives. I've had several tearful conversations with current counselors in the system who will need to have these conversations with students and their family members, and they are fearful that a child will take their life if they have to have this conversation with a parent in the room. And that does worry me. I've also noticed that there are several forms currently in the CCPS handbook that include only male and female options and not non-binary, so we do need to take a comprehensive look at this. And I want to remind us that CCPS has said that we have assurances that all students, gender conforming, gender non-conforming, and transgender will be safe, welcomed, and affirmed within the school system. I agree with Dr. Dorsey. I think the individual gender-neutral bathrooms are ideal. I think they also limit opportunities for bullying and drug use, so I think that that's a fantastic option.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, so to answer the question, the initial question, at no point should a parent not be involved in this decision. I don't believe schools replace a parent. And I understand that it's sensitive and understand students may have difficult conversations, but I'm on the side of the school does not replace the parent. So that part of the question. I am a father of 3 girls, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the sports part of it. I think we've taken a massive step backwards in women's rights. It wasn't too long ago that women fought to be able to compete in sports and have the same equal opportunity as men. It wasn't too long ago that Title IX came about to give women the same opportunity as men. And now, not too long after that, we're going to tell women that a biological male is now going to be able to have the opportunity to take that away from you. They're going to have an opportunity to compete and take a scholarship away from you. They're going to have an opportunity to compete and take away from you what you work so hard to get, which is women's rights. So I look at it a little differently. I understand. I'm compassionate about those students who feel they should be able to compete against women. But at the same time, I believe women fought way too hard to take that away from them. Bathrooms, father of 3 daughters, I do not believe we should have biological males using the same bathroom as women. Unfortunately, I think the current policy in some schools is if the girl feels uncomfortable, they're to leave and find a different area to change. I think that's unfortunate. We should have women's or girls, boys, and then restrooms for whoever wants to use them. But we shouldn't be allowing biological boys to use girls' restrooms.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, this is probably one of the most difficult questions that we have this evening. I don't have a trans child, but if I did, I would be advocating for that kid. I don't have daughters. But if I did, I wouldn't want them competing against biological males. I understand the conflict from both sides is very personal, very difficult. So our buildings aren't really equipped to deal with, we don't have the unisex bathrooms in our older buildings, and I'm really glad that the newer ones do, and we're looking in that direction for unisex bathrooms. I've talked with several phys ed teachers, coaches who have trans kids in their classes, and I've heard basically the same thing from everybody, that these kids do not want to be the center of attention. They don't want to be drawing attention to themselves. They want privacy. And so, they can use, they'll use the nurse's office to change or to use the bathroom in the nurse's office. They don't want, to be noticed. And so this is one of the areas where really we need to sit down and listen to the stakeholders, like all the stakeholders, and really come up with the solution that is going to be acceptable to all the parties, because this is a tough one.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
And for me, this isn't so tough. I'm not sure why we're not focused on learning, academics, but instead trying to focus on issues and accommodate things that just, to me, make no sense. Should we be kind and considerate to everybody? Absolutely. But this issue of bathroom use or students being able to choose a bathroom that they identify with is just incomprehensible to me. In Orlando a few weeks ago, there was a female student that said she identified as male, walked into a high school locker room, started to disrobe, not only in front of her students, but in front of a male staff member. Is this really where we want to go? Is this really what we want to do? We talk about distractions. We talk about people saying that we should keep secrets from parents. Staff members saying that they should keep secrets from parents to support the child. Parents should always know what their children are doing in schools. There should never be any secrets from parents. And as I've knocked on almost 10,000 doors in this county, the most common concern I hear is, what are you going to do about this issue in schools? Please focus on learning. Please stop all of this focus on things like this. We need to get back to basics. Let's focus on learning.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
Well, first and foremost, all students need to feel safe in our schools. And if a student comes to a teacher and tells them that this is how they feel, the teacher does need to notify the administration, and the administration needs to have a conference with the parent and the students so they can form a plan. There should be no secrets whatsoever kept from a parent. And there is actually current case law backing this up from a situation where a student told a teacher in another county they wanted to kill themselves. It was never disclosed to the parents, and the student killed themselves. And that school system is currently being sued, and that teacher lost their job. So as a parent myself, if someone keeps a secret from me regarding my child, you best bet Mama Bear is going to roar. Regarding sports, it's very difficult. We want everyone and every child to participate. But as Mr. Miller said, women fought for decades just to have the right to play the sports. We have softball, we have women's swimming, we have women's tennis, and when those things are taken away, it is frustrating. And one of someone who I admire greatly is Caitlyn Jenner, and she has said it best, that men do not belong in women's sports.
Thank you. So one topic that has come up quite a lot over the last few years, students with IEPs and 504 plans have found that maybe they have not been met for the past few years. So how would you hold CCBS accountable, and are the requirements now being met? And this time we'll start with Dr. Jaskowski.
Sure. So as an occupational therapy practitioner, I work with children and youth and their families, their caregivers, and their teachers to promote active participation in activities that are meaningful to them, to support their health and well-being and development. I recently held a town hall to meet with and listen to CCPS professionals who serve children with support needs. I surveyed parents and caregivers of these students, and I attended the Special Education Citizens Advisory Committee to get a full picture of the process, the strengths, and the challenges of support services in our school system. I've also had many private conversations with employees and parents who wanted to share their individual experiences navigating the complex IEP and 504 plan processes. I understand, I care, I will listen. I have been there in the room during those meetings. I have developed goals in collaboration with parents and caregivers, and I will advocate for the inclusion of these children and for the voices of their caregivers. Well, there's many fierce parents who will go to the ends of the earth for their kids. They are also often overwhelmed, confused, under-resourced, and poorly represented in planning and administrative conversations. I think it's really important to keep in mind that parents want the best for their kids, and so do the teachers and the administrators. Everyone is working with state and federal guidelines, and it can be challenging, just as some of these other conversations we've been having, to make sure that everybody gets what they need. But understanding the complexities and making sure that we have these students at top of mind because they are some of our most vulnerable is critically important.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I'm actually a parent of a child who has an IEP, started kindergarten with an IEP, and I was actually very pleased. I know not everyone's experience is the same, but I was very pleased with the IEP program, and I'll say it at Manchester Elementary. And I thought it was a great program. It was they kept us informed. We were involved. They ensured my daughter was included in everything, and she got the assistance that she needed in her IEP program. With that being said, I think there's always opportunity. You might, no matter what you do, there's always room to grow. Some of the best sports teams, some of the best managers, some of the best bosses we have are always looking to do better. So I look at an opportunity where maybe we could look at our IEP programs to ensure more inclusiveness. If there's one thing I learned about an IEP program or a lot of the IEPs is a lot of times the students are pulled from a classroom for a small part of the day, or for some it's even a larger part of the day. Let's try to figure out ways to keep them included and keep them involved. One of the best parts about being in elementary school, where a lot of the IEPs are and some kids graduate or they carry over, you go to school for the community aspect of it, for the friendships. So one thing I would like to look at is how can we ensure that these students are being included in more of the classroom time, while still focusing on their IEP. So yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yeah, as a reading specialist, I sat through more IEP meetings than I could count. About half of my students had either IEPs or 504s. So I worked very, very closely with the special education departments in the two schools where I worked. And having either a special ed teacher in the classroom with you is, whether that or an instructional assistant, is hugely, hugely important. You know, and as when I pushed in with the U.S. history and government classes, we had a special ed teacher or instructional assistant in there as well, or sometimes both, because those students need that extra support. And there's a lot of different roles that the special ed education teacher plays. There are of course, the meetings, but the interventions and working directly with the students is what the teachers and the IAs want to do. As far as the teachers themselves, the one thing that I've heard over and over again from just about every single special ed teacher I know is that they're overwhelmed with the paperwork. They want to be in the classroom, but the paperwork, is hours and hours and hours. And I think one thing CCPS can do a better job is relieving the paperwork from the instructors so they can be delivering the interventions to the students.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Thank you. A really important question and topic for me because, again, I am a special needs parent. Also, as a teacher, I had dozens of special needs students, IEPs, 504s, and even 508s, which folks don't know too much about. Things like color vision, other issues that students need to deal with. But those special accommodations are vital to make sure that students learn along with their peers. They are extremely important. But being a parent with a special needs child and being a teacher that was providing those services, it really gives you a special perspective. First of all, the 504 and IEP, those are legal requirements. We have to do those legally. And I don't think parents understand the immense amount of paperwork and requirements associated with it. That paperwork is legally required, and it is a lot. But we need to make sure that we help parents understand how to identify students if they have an IEP or a 504 issue. We need to make sure that we put them in contact with places like Kennedy Krieger, so our civilian practitioners and our healthcare providers can help identify students with these issues and these needs early. Because again, the earlier that students are identified, the more services they get and the better off they are in the long term. We also need to help train our educators on recognizing the 504 and IEP symptoms. But it takes all of us to work together and we can get it done.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
I have some of the same things that Mr. Whistler just said. We need to, make sure we are identifying the students that have needs early. Make sure, again, parental involvement, making sure that the parent reaches out to the teacher and vice versa, what they can do to help at home. The paperwork piece, that is something I've heard so many times from special educator teachers, is that it's insane. The paperwork that they have to do is what takes up most of their time, and they're not able to help the child as much as they would like. And yes, it's a legal requirement. So, we can definitely, again, look into volunteers, look into our partnerships, looking to outside resources to help. And before COVID, that was something we were actually going to do, was looking into hiring more special ed educators for our schools. So it does take time and it's hard, but again, it's everyone working together and making sure parents are involved and they know what they can do to help the teacher, because that helps the student in the long run as well.
Thank you. And Dr. Dorsey.
As teacher and administrator from the past, certainly I'm very familiar with the IEP and the 504 process. The question how to hold accountable, well, as it's been said, there are legal requirements that are set in place. So that's how we're held accountable, by having meetings. Can you stop for one moment? I'm sorry, I got a little distracted. Okay, I'll pick up now. Okay, again, I was trying to say that there are built-in requirements by law. So there are meetings that you have to have 60 days, yearly reviews. So again, these are guidelines of how often we have to meet, and there are certainly measures and goals that are put in place to track the performance of the students. So again, we have built-in accountability as far as special ed, the IEPs and the 504s. One of the things I think that we really need to continue to work on is the relationships piece of it. We need to make sure that we're establishing relationships with the students. Some of the greatest students, greatest achievers that I've worked with have been special ed students who've just given their very, very best. They've given their all. So if we can establish relationships with students, and teachers with the students, students with their peers, and then the teachers working collaboratively with the special ed teachers, I think it will create a win-win for the students who are requiring 504s and IEPs.
Thank you.
And paperwork is always a concern. I meant to say that.
Thanks. Family life curriculum has been a hot topic. Correct me if I'm wrong, I believe at the last board meeting it was agreed that parents be given an option to have their kids opt out of state curriculum in favor of locally written curriculum, or opt out of family life curriculum entirely. So are you in agreement with this? And how do you feel about the state's family life curriculum and its value to students? And let's start with Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Yes, it's been obviously a very hot topic. I believe when this first came up, I spoke at the Board of Education meeting about this, and I do believe that we did a great job with our family life health curriculum. It was made up of community members, it was made up of parents, educators, and we came up with a solution for Carroll County. I think it's unfortunate that the state decided to take a heavy hand in Carroll County and push down, I'll just say, threatened Carroll County in a way that really made it no choice but for us to offer it as an opt-out. With that being said, I think this is going to be very difficult. If you think about it, if you have a large enough opt-out crowd, you're going to have to figure out how to teach two different curriculums, which requires more funding for those positions, and it's going to require more time out of the day to figure out how to teach both programs. I personally, and I think I've said this, and I'll say it again, and I'm sure some will push back against me, I'm going to fight for Carroll County if elected. I believe that Carroll County has a right to do what they believe is best for Carroll County. Others up here don't believe that, and that's perfectly fine. That's their position. But I believe when the state comes down and pushes down with a heavy hand against Carroll County and threatens Carroll County, I believe we push back. I believe that's what we should do. I don't believe that the state has always looked out for the best interests of our students. I don't believe the state has always looked out for the best interests of our staff. And I think in this case, we should have the ability to make the curriculum what we believe is best for Carroll County. And unlike others, again, it's not a popular stance, and that's fine, but that's where I'm at, and I will continue to push back against the state when I believe they're overstepping.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
Yes, I have looked at the state standards as well, and I do question whether some of them are age appropriate. And there are certain things I would not want to be teaching as a classroom teacher. We got to remember most of the standards are fairly broad in scope, and the other thing, the curriculum is written and implemented locally, and and we do have the opt-out option. That's kind of redundant, but parents can opt out, which I think is very, very important. I know a lot of health teachers. They're phys ed teachers, they're coaches. They know their students. They know how to present difficult information to their students. And if there's anybody in our school system that I would trust teaching the sensitive information, it's our health teachers. I think the bigger issue is the cell phones that Mr. Miller has mentioned, certainly, and devices. Kids have far more access to dangerous materials there than anything that they're going to encounter in the classroom. We heard a presentation from the Carroll County Youth Services Bureau, and they were talking about the amount of pornography that even is filtering down to the elementary schools. And to me, that is much, much more dangerous, a much bigger concern.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
Yeah, again, knocking on almost 10,000 doors in this county. What do I hear from many, many residents? They're very concerned about this issue. They're very concerned about schools nationwide in our state and starting to, in some cases, in our own county, focusing on social issues. And the health curriculum being pushed down from the state is astonishing. I really hope people read it. I don't want to say the words here on this stage. My 7th grader at Oklahoma Road Middle is supposed to be taught about solo pleasure, oral pleasure, all kinds of other things. I'm sorry, there's not a teacher in this system I trust to teach my children about those issues other than me. And many other parents I talk to feel the same way. It is not appropriate to talk about sexual issues in our schools. It is not appropriate for staff members to talk about sexual issues to our children in our schools. Moreover, the Board of Education members select the Family Life Council members that develop the opt-out curriculum or the standards for the curriculum. The broad guidelines they give to the teachers and the superintendent to develop the instruction. Be very careful whom you select for your Board of Education, because those folks will choose the members of that Family Life Council, and I want to make sure we have folks that represent the vast majority of the people in this county on that board developing that alternative standard.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
I'm proud of the fact that we did create a Carroll County version to meet the needs of the community. Yes, there is some topics in there that certainly I do not feel the state is asking us to do are age appropriate whatsoever. To even have a discussion with a middle schooler regarding solo sex, and by the way, from what I understand, it's regarding toys. You have to be 18 to purchase those devices. And how do you identify without demonstrating? And I said that at the board meeting, and I think it's a legitimate question. These are things that do not belong in a middle school, maybe a senior in high school, maybe. But there's so many things that are not age appropriate that are looking to be discussed, like gender theory. A kindergartner just knows boy girl. They don't need to have any type of understanding or comprehension of that at that young level. And unfortunately, this idea from the state is not even an original thought. It came from Europe 10 years ago. And they're even pulling back on that now, reversing their decisions. So again, everything needs to be age appropriate, and parent involvement is so important as well.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
I certainly agree that there are some topics that are not age appropriate in the current family life curriculum. And I understand from the state level that when they push this curriculum out, they really push them out or they really pushed the curriculum out as guidelines, and from the guidelines we were supposed to establish our own county curriculum. And I don't think the state did a great job of sharing that's how we should have looked at this as actual guidelines. As I said, I think there are certainly some topics that are not age appropriate, and I think the best thing about the curriculum at this point, as with all family life curriculum, we've always invited parents to preview the curriculum, so it's parental choice. Parents are encouraged to go to the schools when the family life curriculum is being presented. Take a look at what the state is recommending, and again, take a look at what the opt-out or what the county curriculum, family life curriculum is recommending, and make the choice, make the decision for your students based on that. So again, this is one way that parental choice is certainly going to be needed, and it'll be interesting to take a look at the numbers at the end of the year to see how many students participated in which of those curricula.
Thank you. And Dr. Jaskowski.
So as I mentioned before, I have training in child development, human behavior, and cognition, but I've also not heard about a valid explanation for how teaching about family structure or relationship status is related to sexual activity at all, or any evidence that this leads to deviant behavior or unsafe practices. I think this whole conversation is quite a distraction, frankly. The MSD instructional guidelines are just that, they're guidelines. They're clear, but they're short and they're very general, and they're meant to serve as guidance. They were developed by experts, but they're meant to be taught with thoughtfulness and caring by instructors who have participated in the process of curriculum development, along with parents who can and should be involved in that process, as Dr. Dorsey said. I recently completed a 10-year accreditation process for the program that I direct, and my role was to demonstrate in painstaking detail how we met each of the educational standards for my graduate program. This process of curriculum development is long, it has many steps, it includes a lot of checks and balances. So there will be proposals as we work through this, there will be opportunity for comment, there will be refinements and so on, and parents can and should be part of that process.
Thank you very much. Okay. The school board is, of course, nonpartisan. So is it appropriate to receive endorsements and in some cases donations from partisan groups or political figures, or from any of the bargaining units that are constantly in negotiations with CCPS? And how do voters know that you won't be beholden to the groups or individuals who helped you get elected? And let's start with Mr. Scanlon.
Okay. Unfortunately, the whole process of running for an office, even the Board of Education, requires you to raise money. I wish it wasn't that way. I've always said, and I've many times, that the Board of Education is nonpartisan for a reason. There's absolutely no place for politics to be on the Board of Education and to be in our schools. Having said that, the reality is we need to raise funds. And where that money comes from, it could come from all over the place. I know personally my campaign, not personally, my campaign has received some donations from moderate Republicans and moderate Democrats. It's just, the reality. As far as endorsements go, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to endorsements. Here in Carroll County, they do seem to be pretty partisan. And, that leads to the whole feeling of the campaign being partisan. I don't like it. It's just the way Carroll County and politics is.
Thank you. Mr. Whistler.
I really appreciate this question. I really do, because I get a lot of heat about it, and I'm going to be very clear. All elections are political, whether you like it or not. When President Biden nominated people to the Supreme Court, that's political. He wants somebody on that court that has his values, but when they get on that court, they need to be nonpartisan, and that's the same case here. I am proud of my endorsements. I am proud to be endorsed by every single state delegate and state senator that represents Carroll. I'm really proud of that. But you need to look at a candidate's values. The number one question I get at these doors that I knock on, it's not about education. The first question is, are you a Democrat or Republican? Because that is a major benchmark that people use to look at your values. But I assure you, I do not want anything in our schools to pump out students that feel values to the left or to the right. We need to execute our duty on the board in a nonpartisan fashion to make sure that we remain politically neutral, and we need to do that every single day. You don't hear us on our ticket talk about instituting values of the right in our schools. You don't hear us talking about trying to make sure we talk to our kids about this issue or that issue. But unfortunately, our opponents are all about their values, their take on the issues, their social and political perspectives. I will not let it happen in our schools.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
Nonpartisan only means there is no R, D, I, L, whatever, behind your name on a ballot. That's what nonpartisan is. If anybody asks me, I'm going to be honest with them what party affiliation I identify with. We're supposed to be proud of who we are or how we identify. So I should not and will not hide who I am when I am asked. It's pointless to lie about it, to deceive people about it. It's pointless. When it comes to being on the Board of Ed, you do have to make decisions that are neutral. You have to look at both sides. And I do that with every decision I have made. Whether people believe it or not, I have. I have tally marks. I literally do the pros and the cons. Something I learned in one of my psychology classes. That is how I go about making sure that the right decision is being made, is you have to look at everything that's laid out on the table. And yes, I leave my party affiliation out of it, again, whether you believe it or not. But when it comes to being on the Board of Ed, that is how those decisions must be made at all costs.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
I have said to people in the past that I am running for a nonpartisan seat on the Board of Education. And it's just too bad that we've gotten to the point where even running for the board has become political. I will say that no one speaks for me, and there's going to be no one label that defines me, be it political party or otherwise. I don't make any promises to anyone other than to say that I'm always going to problem solve and weigh each issue on its own merits and make my decisions based on that. So again, it's just too bad that we've gotten to the point that, we started this conversation by talking about the academic achievement of our students and what we need to be doing to help them move forward. That is the major concern of the Board of Education, not what party you belong to, not what set of ideals you propose, but it's what are you going to do to enhance the achievement of each and every student. So again, I'm just sorry that we had to entertain this question, but just know that I don't let any label define who I am.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
I agree with Dr. Dorsey that this divisiveness is truly unfortunate. I think it's also important to understand that candidates and board members are part of the community. We're neighbors, which is why it's a shame that not all candidates have maintained a positive campaign and have actually resorted to attack ads and repeating known falsehoods despite being asked directly to stop and correct them. This type of campaigning, while always distasteful, simply doesn't make sense on the local level. Good board members and candidates need to be available, responsive, professional, respectful, and effective in their communication. Well, I do need to draw some distinctions tonight between myself and my opponents. I don't think anyone can argue that I haven't run a positive campaign emphasizing my strengths. To that end, along with 6 organizations related to education, health, and parenting, I have been endorsed by esteemed local educators at all levels, community leaders from both major parties, and former CCPS superintendents and boards of education members. When we talk about getting back to a focus on academic instruction and student success, these are the people who proved they know how to do it, and I'm the candidate they trust to do this work. The Teachers Association has for many years endorsed candidates who represent a diversity of values and beliefs. Again, as they should. This year, they endorsed those who they know will have the best interest of students and the school system at heart, and that's myself, Dr. Dorsey, and Mr. Scanlon.
Thank you. And Mr. Miller.
Thank you for this question. So I think we got to point out, I'm proud to have the endorsement of our elected commissioners, newly going to be elected. Since it's a Republican county, most people don't realize there's actually not a Democrat in any position of office in Carroll County. So when you talk about endorsements, they can only come from one side in Carroll County. So everybody who talks about Democrat, Republican, we only have Republican delegates, Republican commissioners. So if you're going to get endorsements, it's going to be Republican. That's just the nature of it. As for the bargaining agreements, I'm the only candidate up here who did not seek the CCEA endorsement. I'll tell you why. I believe it's a conflict of interest. If you're going to elect people to a Board of Education, should you be electing somebody that was funded by a bargaining group who then has to negotiate with that bargaining group? So I'm the only candidate up here who did not seek that endorsement. So while everyone else is talking about it should be bipartisan, we shouldn't, I'm the only one who actually held my word and didn't actually seek that endorsement. And they're going to try to label me as anti-teacher. It's absolutely not that. I will bargain 100% with the teachers in mind. I would do the best to get them what they deserve, but I will not be beholden to a teachers union with a CCEA who would have funded my campaign. Falsehoods in the election. I 100% agree. As a matter of fact, that CCEA and MSEA put out a falsehood not too long ago about me and my campaign, one that was actually debunked by their lawyer and actually who sent me an email apologizing. What did they not do? They did not pull that article. They actually published it in the Carroll County Times. So if we're going to talk about falsehoods and running a clean campaign, I'm the only one up here who didn't seek an endorsement from a bargaining group who I would have to negotiate with because I'm going to do it fairly and I'm going to do it for the best interest of our students, teachers, and parents.
Thank you. All right, we got time for one more question. And it's a question we received from a voter, and it's a question we really liked. So, if you are elected 4 years from now, what will you be looking back at as the accomplishment you are most proud of as a school board member? And how will you have achieved that goal? So let's start with Mr. Whistler, please.
Well, I'll tell you, 4 years from now, I hope that we look back on just how much we progressed as far as restoring learning loss. Again, it is the most pressing issue facing our county. And so we really need to focus on and have an all hands on deck approach to making sure that we address learning loss, that we fix the and turn around this decline since 2013 of our math, science, ELA, and all the other academic benchmarks we looked at and need to address. I hope 4 years from now we can look back and say, wow, we went through redistricting smartly. We did it with minimal impact to our communities. But moreover, we did it with so much public input and participation that we tried our very best to make a very terrible situation as good as it possibly could be. That is one of the things I hope we look on 4 years from now and say we did a good job. And then finally, I think we should look back, hopefully 4 years from now, and say that every single dollar that every taxpayer gave was used smartly, wisely, and we had such a tremendous return on investment that our students are better for it. That's really what I hope that we do, those three things. And so I really look forward to that, and I know we're going to do a great job working together.
Thank you. Mrs. Battaglia.
So 4 years from now, wow, it's hard to think of the future that way. I mean, currently I'm very proud of the achievements I have done regarding Career and Technology Center, and I look forward to that completion and the opening of the new East Middle School. But I think also look to making sure our student improvement, that they're getting where they need to be, because it is going to take a little bit of time, but we can do it. Our teacher retention and salaries, I'll be able to look back and say, I improved that. I want to make sure we continue and even improve our current graduation rate. We have a very good one here in Carroll County, but there's always room for improvement. You can always go up a percentage or two. And then our student engagement with Career and Technology Center to be good citizens in the community, and maybe even have our bullying situations go down drastically. That would be a wonderful accomplishment, and that all that takes, every single piece of that takes community involvement and parent involvement and everyone working together to reach those goals.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Okay, since the question asked for the one accomplishment that you'd be most proud of, I'm going to say that it would be the academic achievement of our students. I'd really like to see CCPS regain top levels throughout the state in our reading, our math. We've done well in science now, but I want us to continue that in science and to make sure that we regain top levels throughout the state for our student achievement. And tied in with that, I'll also include the Career and Technology Center. We want to make sure that we are preparing students for jobs and for further study in that vein as well. So again, the mission of the board is to look out for the achievement and to promote the achievement of the students. And that's something that I really would be most proud of if we can get back to regaining our top levels of performance throughout the state.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
I also would like to make sure that I am involved in increasing student success. But I think it's important that we talk about the fact that student success is not just academics. So certainly I would like to see test scores improve, student learning outcomes improve. But also I want to make sure that students are prepared for our increasingly complex society. So developing empathy, making sure that, again, we are continuing to value our educators, making sure that students are set up for success with support so that they can actually learn and grow in a safe environment. I also want to make sure that I would leave a legacy of leadership as working on a team. capitalizing on our strengths, thinking about the diversity of perspectives we might bring to a conversation. I have said many times, the reason that this is leadership by committee is because we shouldn't all have the same opinion, and I really value that. So I think that one of the things I would bring is a clear vision, my ability to inspire others, and also to put in place a structure to get work done towards our common and shared values.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
Thank you. I'm going to say the one thing is that I stuck to my word. And with that, I was able to think outside the box and help our students recover from learning loss. Reverse the restorative justice policy that allows bullies to continue to bully students with no penalty. Use our tax dollars wisely and fight for our teachers to get them the pay they deserve and our buildings the upgrades that they need. I also agree with, being honest and looking at redistricting and ensuring that we do what needs to be done, that classrooms are of equal size, and we're able to give the students the best education possible. But the one thing I'll be proud of is that I stuck to the word that I promised everybody throughout the campaign. I promised to always think outside the box. I promised to always be fair and look at both sides of it. As I said, I promised that I wouldn't be beholden to a bargaining unit or an organization that funded my campaign that I had to negotiate with. I promised to fight for teachers, students, and parents. And I think hopefully the one thing that people walk out of after 4 years is, one, they reelect me since I'll be able to run again. But secondly, they say I held to my word.
Thank you. And Mr. Scanlon.
It wasn't that long ago that Carroll County led the state in education, and Maryland always led the country. So as far as I'm concerned, Carroll County is the best in the country. So in 4 years, I want to make sure that our graduation rates and our attendance are still at the top. And I also want to make sure that we are featuring on grade level instruction across the board. And also the other thing I would be very proud of is if we can expand our career and tech programs. The new building is incredible, and we're revamping the older part of the building. We have the different trades, carpentry, masonry, that kind of thing. But we also have incredibly high tech programs there with engineering, cybersecurity, CAD, there's nursing. So all those things are very, very important. And one last thing is the Teacher Academy of Maryland. I think that is a great way of creating homegrown teachers, teachers that have gone through Carroll County schools, they go off to college, they come back to Carroll County. I think that would be the real legacy. Thank you.
Thank you. And that'll do it for the Q&A tonight. Wish we could have gotten to more questions. We could have gone another 2 hours, but we certainly had a good time. And I think it was very informative for the voters. And I'm not sure I could have stood up here for another 2 hours anyway. But at any rate, let's finish off. We've come all the way back around to Mrs. Battaglia again. So let's have a concluding statement now from everybody. And again, a reminder: everybody will have 2 minutes for these. So again, we'll start with Mrs. Battaglia.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone that was involved in having this forum tonight. It does take a village to put together something like this and to make sure we all can attend. Then we have someone asking our questions, and then we have our cameras that are all working. So it truly takes a lot to make sure these things all come together to have a wonderful forum. I've been here on the Board of Ed going on now 4 years, and it's been great. I love it. I love doing what I do. I love being there for our kids and trying to make sure our teachers get what they need. It is not without challenges, and you grow a spine, and you have to do things that you wouldn't think you would have to do, make decisions you didn't think you would have to do, but you do it all. And you wake up the next day and you go about knowing that what you did is going to impact everybody in the long run. I still have the same 3 goals as I did 4 years ago. And the first one was keeping communities together. And of course, that's been expanded now with the potential of redistricting. But we are looking forward to our feasibility study to see what we can do to better our schools, particularly here in the southern end of the county. drug education. I continue to advocate for more drug education in our schools, and I'm proud of the fact that I was able to get naloxone training into our high school health curriculum and navigating the waters event that we have annually for our schools now with local organizations bringing information for our families. And the consistency in our curriculum. We hear about our Career and Technology Center. Yes, we are getting ready to finish the modernization project with that, and we are looking to expand some of the new potential programs, possibly plumbing. So thank you again, and please vote for me in the next coming days. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Dorsey.
Many thanks again to the Liberty High School PTSO, Oklahoma Road Middle School PTA, the Carroll Media Center, Bob Bluebaugh, our timekeeper, and to our audience for attending tonight's forum. And I'm very grateful as well to the citizens who are watching at home to become informed. I've said before that it is certainly because of our students, our staff, our parents, and our communities that we can claim Carroll County as an outstanding school system. Please know that I remain committed to our values, beliefs, and shaping our strategic plan as we move forward. I believe we can work together to realize achievement for all of our students. I will continue to use my knowledge, skills, and abilities as I pursue a second term on the Board of Education. The education of our students is the major mission of the Board of Education as we fulfill the governance role for our system. Moving forward, my top priorities are, again, to ensure that every student is provided a pathway and opportunities for success, to retain and recruit quality teachers and staff to enhance a diverse workforce, to ensure that our staff salaries are competitive, and to support implementation of the blueprint for Maryland's future. I continue to ask for your support. I ask you to please vote for Patricia Ann Dorsey to continue to serve on the Board of Education for our students, staff, families, and communities of Carroll County. Your support will be deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Jaskowski.
Once again, thank you to the organizers of this forum, the audience members, and those who submitted questions. Here's the thing. My opponents are running against something. I'm running for something. They've run on fear and outrage, which can be powerful. However, I don't think they have the experience or the ideas to lead effectively. My opponents are explicitly supported by and explicitly support both candidates and national organizations with stated goals to defund and break down public education. Why they would align themselves with these groups is certainly questionable. Some have attempted to establish a false dichotomy, social issues versus academics. I get it. Nothing raises the stakes in life like having kids. The future matters, and emotions are running high. If elected, I will ensure that parents will always have a voice and that we as a board will always focus on academics. I say this as both a parent and an educator. A vote for me is an investment in someone who will work toward reducing class sizes and school overcrowding, increasing instructional assistance and support staff, providing more individualized attention and wraparound services to those who need it, maintaining high standards for academic rigor, evidence-based practices, and qualified teachers, thinking creatively about the use of technology and alternative methods to accessing the curriculum and demonstrating learning. I've had so many fantastic conversations with current and former educators, and if you haven't decided who to vote for Board of Education yet, ask a teacher, ask a current student, ask a neighbor. I've earned their support, and I'm grateful for their trust and confidence that I might be able to serve their families and their children as part of their village. I've said before that I have zero aspirations for higher office because I believe that education is truly the highest calling. As an educator and a potential board member, I would be able to have a lasting impact on my community and the state of education for my own children and the future leaders of our society.
Thank you. Mr. Miller.
All right. Thank you to everybody for the opportunity tonight. Bob, thank you for no softballs like I expected, so I appreciate that. But I think we have a real clear choice in this election. We have parents versus secrets. We have a bargaining bargaining group who shuttered our schools for 2 years that led to massive learning loss versus parents fighting to ensure their kids get the education they deserve. I made a promise very early on. I said that I will fight for every student, parent, and teacher. And a vote for me will ensure that. I will ensure that our teachers get what they deserve. I'm the only one up here with the finance background that will allow me to come in and negotiate and bargain with not only the commissioners, but with the bargaining group that I'm not beholden to. With that, I also want to point out that I've fought hard to reverse the restorative justice policy I will fight hard to reverse the restorative justice policy that the state has that protects bullies. Everything we talk about, whether it's the pride flag, whether it's kids, turning to drugs, cell phones, everything comes back to we protect the bullies. Kids are able to bully over and over again through social media in our classrooms, and we're so worried about the restorative justice policy they push down that we don't protect the kids being bullied. I promise to fight that. I promise to do what's best for Carroll County and fight the state if they push back against us. But I think the biggest thing is we need a diverse board. We can't have groupthink. We can't have 5 board members with the same background sitting together and making policy decisions for Carroll County. I ask for your vote. I ask for your support, and I look forward to the election on November 8th.
Thank you. Mr. Scanlon.
I've spoken to a lot of parents, grandparents, and young people over the past several months, and one message comes through loud and clear. The people of Carroll County want a strong school system. That's why many of them moved here. That's why people stay here. Parents in particular want our schools to put their children first. Most people I've talked to don't give one iota about political party or what politicians have to say. They want their schools focused on academics while teaching the whole child. Reading and math skills need to be on grade level. Physical education and the arts are essential. The social skills of cooperation and getting along are real-life components of education. In the younger grades especially, kids need to be kids and have some fun. That's what parents want, and that's what our students need. There's one thing I hear from parents and educators alike. It's way past time to return to normal. People are sick of the negativity and the politics. Looking back only accomplishes so much. We need to be looking ahead. We absolutely must stay focused on academics, which includes the arts, world languages, special education, agri-science, business, career tech. The list could go on. And these are all vital for student success. Our students are facing an increasingly complex and diverse world. They need to be problem solvers. They need to be creative. They need to be critical thinkers and readers. They need to be able to communicate effectively. They need to be able to work with others. And who is better equipped to help us return to normal than the professional educators who know what normal is? As a Board of Education, it is our job to help our students get there as best we can. Yes, we have to deal with a lot of nuts and bolts like budgets and contracts and Maryland state standards. But my heart is with the students. That's how I spent my career, and that's why I'm running for the Board of Education. So thank you for listening, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. And that means, Mr. Whistler, you get the last word.
Again, thanks so much to both schools, PTAs for sponsoring the event. Thank you so much for everything. You know, my campaign motto is together we create great schools. And our schools are already great. But it takes the board, parents, teachers, the business community, elected officials. We all need to work together. We have so many challenges ahead. And I say, let's do this. And I say, let's do this by getting back to the basics. The Board of Education manages half of the county budget, negotiates employer group contracts, is responsible for allocating hundreds of millions of dollars. And we need people with the resume and the leadership experience to do it. I really want folks to identify, evaluate, and look at the candidates. I have led large organizations in my military career, my business career. I've managed hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets, managed organizations over $2 billion in assets. I think I have the resume to get this job done for you. At the same time, we need to make sure we focus resources on teachers, protect parents' rights, protect the right of parents to see what's going on in our schools, to partner with our teachers. But most of all, we need people to protect kids from inappropriate material. And our team will do that. I know I will do that. I have the formal education of an Associate Arts degree from Catonsville Community College, a BA in Sociology from Excelsior College, a Master's of Science in Management from Troy State, and I've also taken classes, almost completed a Master's of Science in Education degree at Johns Hopkins University, and completed all doctoral coursework at the University of Phoenix. I think this skill set that I possess will help us address learning loss, make sure that we focus every dollar where it needs to be to keep our schools safe, but above all else, focus on academics and try to remove the distractions whenever possible. I would really appreciate your vote.
Thank you. And that concludes our forum. Thanks again very much to all the candidates for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks also to our host, Michelle Rogers, and to our timer, Heather Mattern. Thanks to Scott Waltauer, Katie Reed, and Dan Rogers, and everyone with the Liberty High School PTSO and the Oklahoma Road Middle School PTA. Thanks again to Principal Gonsk and CCPS for the use of Liberty High School, and thanks to our SRO here, Jessica Snyder, and of course to everyone who turned out tonight and everyone watching at home. This forum will be available for on-demand viewing at carrollmediacenter.org, as well as on Facebook and YouTube, and it will repeat regularly on cable channel HD 1086 until the election. And before we go, I'd just like to encourage everyone to learn about all the candidates running for the 2022 general election by visiting our voters guide on the CMC's website. And just, again, keep in mind, voting is not just a right, it's our responsibility. So be sure to vote, whether by mail, during early voting, or by coming out to the polls on Election Day, November 8th. It's an important election, and we hope that you all take part. Thank you, and good night.